Okay, I'm doing a detour today. Yeah, I know. Jim does detours. So this is not a meaningless picture. I'll explain it before we get there this morning rather than afterwards, so you don't have to sit the whole time going, why did he do that? Okay, so you've seen this quote before probably. Every beast of the forest is mine, the cattle on 1,000 hills. Right, well that comes from Psalm 50. So I was reading Psalm 50 the other day, and partially I couldn't remember why God says this in Psalm 50. And then I sort of got what I call biblically ambushed by God. That is, I mean, you're reading something, you don't really expect, Psalms are a safe place, so you don't expect to be ambushed, you know. I mean, it's just kind of, it's routine stuff, and so not a big deal. And as I'm reading through Psalm 50, God ambushed me and convicted me. So, out of the Psalms of all the safe places. So I wanted to share that with you today because this is really, well, let's see if it ambushes you, okay? So we'll start with this question. Why does God say this? What's the big deal about he owns the cattle on 1,000 hills? Because we say that all the time. This, by the way, is the only place where it says it. It's in Psalm 50. So in what context would he say that? And why did Jim get ambushed? Well, let's find out. So we're just going to read it and see where it goes. So it starts off like this. It says, the mighty one, God the Lord. So in case you wonder who's speaking in the psalm, in the first person, this is God himself. And he uses, he pulls out of his dictionary the biggest words he can for God because he brings out both on the left and the right there, this El Elohim and then Jehovah. So this is, the El, every time you see El, it means power. I always think biceps, someone doing this. El. And so Elohim, that's a plural on top. So it's the powerful ones. So it's like the plural amplification of power. So Elohim means power. That's really power. And then of course Jehovah, that's the covenant name for God. So these are the big hitters. So when you start into Psalm 50, make no mistake, this is God speaking in the first person. Well, okay, got my attention. Okay, I'm listening. The mighty one, God the Lord, speaks and summons the earth from the rising of the sun to its setting. So his audience is everyone, okay? Everything that lives on the earth is like God is saying, pay attention, everyone on the earth, here we go, I have a message. So this really ought to perk you up right here and say something important's coming. So this is the one from the rising of the sun to the setting. Out of Zion, the perfection of beauty, God shines forth. So Zion is kind of metaphorically the home place of God, but from out of Zion, where God touches down on the earth, he is now shining forth. So in case you wondered what was going to come next, God's not going to be ambiguous. He's going to shine forth. So look out, here it comes. Very few Psalms start this way, by the way. This is really a wake up and pay attention kind of psalm. So God shines forth. Pay attention, everybody. And when he says shine, this reminded me of this phrase that's used a lot today. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. God is going to shine in a second here on something that you may not be comfortable with. Here we go. Our God comes. By the way, that should be a terrifying phrase to most people. If you look in the Old Testament and you look at Mount Sinai and all that kind of stuff where God's up there with Moses and the people down at the bottom of the mountain while Moses is up there, not Charlton Heston, Moses is up at the top. And remember the people said, make the noise stop, make the trembling stop because this is terrifying. So to come near to God was actually a terrifying sort of thought. That thought didn't change until you get into some of the Psalms and in the New Testament. Remember, David himself says it's really good to be near God, to be in the nearness of God. But God is a holy and a just God. So in this particular psalm, when he says he's coming, you kind of tremble. Just a little bit tremble. Our God comes, and he does not keep silence. Oh, man. Before him is a devouring fire. Around him, a mighty tempest. So the writer's trying to think of probably the most terrifying natural events, which are always ascribed to God. So here comes God. He's not keeping silent. He's going to say what's on his mind, and the result is going to be like a devouring fire or a mighty tempest. He calls to the heavens above and to the earth that he may judge his people. Yikes. Now, if you're faint of heart, at this point in the psalm, you might as well just close the book and do something kind of innocuous. Because something's coming down here that has every hint about being super important. So, this is bad. Now, you got to notice too, he's judging his people. So when we think about that, we're thinking about the people, this covenant people, which includes us, people who have given their hearts and lives to this God. You say, "You're my God," we'll be his people. That kind of covenant relationship. That's who he's talking to. So this is not some kind of confrontation from heaven with people who are rank sinners who basically tell God, "Go away, I don't want you." These are people who claim to be people of God. And he's starting it out really disturbingly powerfully. He's not going to keep silent. So even when you get to verse 4 in this, you're thinking, man, what is wrong? Something is tremendously wrong. And God is not going to keep silence, and he's going to put it on the table right in front of us. What is wrong? Verse 5, "Gather to me my faithful ones." See, these are the ones that follow God. "Gather to me my faithful ones who made a covenant with me by sacrifice." These are the covenant people of God. "The heavens declare his righteousness," God's righteousness, "for God himself is judge." Is God qualified to be judge? Yes, because the heavens tell of his righteousness. So here comes the righteous God. This God is coming near. God himself is judge. And he now is shining forth. And in case you're just a little bit too messed up by how powerful the beginning of this is, he puts a little Salah in there, which means dramatic pause. I mean, it's like, man, I can just hold on a second. I need to recover Salah. That's what that is. It's sort of like at the end of a refrain, it's for you to catch your breath and get ready for what comes next. Well, again, if you're reading slowly, you're asking yourself, what in the world is so wrong? God has come out of heaven. He's going to shine forth on you. He's not going to keep his silence. And boom, here it comes. Well, what is it? "Hear, O my people, and I will speak. O Israel, I testify against you." Well, I know. We got that already. Well, what are you going to testify against us about? "I am God, your God." Now, so in just saying it like that, he's not saying like, "I'm God who runs the universe out there somewhere." "I am God, your God." Remember, when you put your hands in this relationship with God, it's a mutual kind of devotion to one another. It's sort of marriage-like in a way. So he says, "I'm God, your God." So like if I said to Dorothy, "I'm a husband, your husband."
Amen.
Amen. Okay. There's an implicit, devoted, and powerful connection speaking that you wouldn't have if that connection wasn't there. So God's saying, look, the primary covenant in the entire Bible is, if you'll be my people, I will be your God. Do you hear how it's kind of mutual? If you'll be my people, I will be your God. Well, that's what he's saying right here. I'm your God. I'm your God. I'm your God. So now, are you ready to listen? Okay. So it's not for your sacrifices that I rebuke you. Well, then what's the problem? It's not your sacrifices. You go back to the Old Testament, and God commanded them, bring your sacrifices to the temple, and these sacrifices are triggered basically by a recognition on your part of sin. It's a follow-through with dealing with this awareness of your own sin. It's an atonement for that sin. But you're coming to the temple, and you're bringing these sacrifices. You're killing doves. You're killing goats and lambs. You're killing bulls. I mean, your blood is spilling because of your sin. So he's saying, okay, I'm not going to bring up this next topic, because your sacrifices are somehow not working. Because he says they are. It's not for your sacrifices that I rebuke you. Well, let's stay on the sacrifice idea for a second. Look, your burnt offerings are continually before me. So good, that's what you're supposed to be doing. So this is not the issue, but I just want to let you know this is not the issue. And let's continue on it. Look, verse 9, I will not accept a bull from your house or goats from your folds. I will not accept a bull from your house or goats. So you're doing the sacrifices, but at this point God's saying, I'm not going to accept what you're offering. Why? Look, every beast of the forest is mine, the cattle on 1,000 hills. I know all the birds in the hills, and all that moves in the field is mine. So if you think that you're bringing to me sacrifices because I need them, you're wrong, because I own everything. That's all he's saying right here. I own all the animals. So if you think I asked you to sacrifice a lamb, for instance, because God needs a lamb, no, God owns all the animals. That's the context of the cow picture, is the fact that God owns all the animals. So he doesn't ask you to sacrifice the animals because somehow he needs them, because he's come up short in his own fold and he doesn't have animals. No, he owns everything. He owns everything. So you are doing your sacrifices, and they are in front of me continually, but I'm not going to accept the things from your house and your folds because I own everything. So it raises the issue, so then what's the problem? We know what the problem is not, but there is some reason God's not accepting our sacrifices. And it's not because God needs what you offer in sacrifice. And he's going to continue this idea, just to let you know. Look, if I were hungry, I wouldn't tell you. For the world and its fullness are mine. So remember again, sacrifices get done in the temple. The priests normally are the ones that benefit from the roasted meat. So that's how they eat. That's how they survive. But God's saying right here, look, you're doing your sacrifices, but I don't need them to. I never get hungry. It's not as though, as some kind of pagan idea of a God, that if you don't do your sacrifices, God's going to get hungry and he's going to get mad at you. Because everything is God's. The fullness, everything, they're all mine. If I were hungry, I wouldn't tell you. Why? Because you tell you that? No, because I never get hungry, and everything is mine. So we still seem to have not gotten to the heart of the issue, but we do know what the issue is not. The issue is not so much the sacrifices, and yet the sacrifices aren't working for some reason, the way they're intended by God. Something's broken here. And if you think that you're doing your sacrifice because God needs the animals you're sacrificing, you're probably thinking wrong. So I think we're getting close to the idea. The issue isn't you're doing your sacrifices because God's hungry for, lamb chops this week. That's not it at all. He doesn't need those sacrifices. Okay, so let's get to the heart of the issue. What is it that this God, this judge, is doing? Do I eat the flesh of bulls or drink the blood of goats? Rhetorically speaking, the answer is no. Okay, so again, the motivations for doing the sacrifices is not to feed God or give him something he doesn't have. Now, just if we step back for a second, pagan theology is that all over the place. It's all over the place that if we don't feed this pagan God, then he'll get mad at us, and we need to feed him because he needs the stuff that we can give to him. God's saying right here, that's not a motivation for sacrifices. There's something else that motivates sacrifice, and you can get into that in the Old Testament, and it'll start to be implied here in just a second. We're still just skirting the issue. I mean, remember, God started out in the beginning of this psalm quite powerfully and quite boldly, and came to the point where he said, I am the judge of everything. So everything on earth, listen up. I'm shining forth. I'm going to speak. I'm not going to hold my silence any longer. Here it comes. Get ready. Everybody listen. Here it goes. And he still hasn't gotten to it. Well, here we go. By the way, this is the ambush. When you get here, you think maybe it's sexual sin. Maybe that's what God is kind of peeved about. Maybe it's how much I rely on deceit in my life. Yeah, even God could get mad at that. Maybe it's because I covet things. I always want something else. That could be. Maybe it's because I ignore the widows and orphans, which was a big deal in the Old Testament. The people who had no resources at all. You need to be a resource for the people who have no resources. It could be any number of these things. Offer to God a sacrifice of thanksgiving. This is what God is peeved about. What? I read this and I thought, I'm sort of thankful. Yeah, now again, it's sort of. Yeah, this is where, I went past it and then I came back and the train wreck happened. I think I suddenly realized when I got to this point that God's heart for us to be thankful people might be bigger than my heart for being thankful. Because, he just spent the entire front end of this psalm sobering me up big time and saying, listen up, there's a big, big problem. And you are continually offering sacrifices, and it's not the frequency of your sacrifices, but I'm not accepting them anymore because something's fundamentally broken in this system. I don't like your sacrifices because I need to eat. I don't do that. But there's something broken in the sacrifice. And you know what's broken in the sacrifices when you come to me? You are not thankful. This is a gigantic deal to God. Now look, when I was a kid, when you'd receive gifts as a kid and you finally get, a birthday or Christmas or something like that, and these gifts come, you are so overwhelmed with the gift. It's like, whoa, the whole world is this gift. And even before you open the gift, you're overwhelmed with the gift before you open it. That's all you can think about. It's the gift, it's the gift, it's the gift. And so when you get the gift and then you're consumed with being just elated about the gift, is this just me? Do I get all worked up about it? I get so elated about it. And then my parents would have to say, you need to tell the person that gave that gift, thank you. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Right? You get so consumed with the gift. Well, this is where we get with God. He gives us good things. We get so consumed with the good things, we forget someone in the background is saying, you really should say thank you. Yeah. Thanks, God, this is great. Right? No. The issue really is not the gift, it's the thankfulness. The thankfulness might be a much bigger issue than we think. And this is the ambush for me. In fact, if I was going to make a prioritized list of good things I need to do in my life, I'd make a list of maybe 20 things. Thanksgiving would be in there, giving thanks would be in there, but it'd be kind of middle to low. Like it's something you're supposed to do, but I'm not really sure I would call it core or key. And what he's going to say is, no, actually, it's probably close to number one. What? Yeah. Let's see what he says. Offer to God a sacrifice of thanksgiving and perform your vows to the Most High. These are the promises you make, mutually with God. And call upon me in the day of trouble and I will deliver you. This is God saying, this is what I want from you. This is the proper response from you, the people of God. This is your response. The burning sacrifices I asked you to do, but unless this is part of your heart, you've missed the point of the sacrifices. Now this happens, this internalizing of why God asks you to do things in the Old Testament comes up in many ways. For instance, God instituted circumcision. But many times in the Old Testament, you don't have to wait till Jesus. God says, yeah, okay, circumcision is great, and I asked you to do that, but you know what? Your hearts aren't circumcised. You go, how does that work? Well, there's an internal issue with who you are that the circumcision on the outside is reflecting. And if the inside's not right, then the outside doesn't matter. Same thing with sacrifices. If the insides aren't right, then the outsides doesn't matter. So if you come to God in your sacrifice at the temple in the Old Testament, you come to God with an animal that's in response to a sin on your part. If there's no thankfulness in your heart at the point you're doing this, you've missed the whole point of the sacrifice. Now, what's the essence of the thankfulness in your heart when you bring a sacrifice because of your own failings? The issue is, God has not kicked me out of His community because of my sins. He could have. He could have come down to me like a ton of bricks when I sinned and did something just crazily bad. But God says, I'm not going to kick you out of the camp. I'm not going to push you out of this place. But you need to come to me with your sacrifices with a heart of thankfulness that I'm a God who's slow to anger and abounding in loving kindness and forgiveness. That should be the fundamental motivation of your heart. Should bring you to thanksgiving at that point. That's what we're talking about, and that's what he's getting at right here. We'll go more in this. I also want you to notice this list right here, because this is the heart of the psalm right here. What he's asking you to do has to do 100% with your relationship with God. Has nothing to do with bringing sacrifices. It's everything to do with relationship. Relationship, thanksgiving, thankfulness for what He's done for us, vows, what I've promised to God that I would do, and in the day of trouble, I call to Him and He delivers me. Now, by the way, that last one's really peculiar until you think about it. In the day of trouble, of course, that's about the only time I call on God is when I'm in trouble. Why wouldn't I call God in a day of trouble? Well, we are often in a position where we can handle things. right? Okay, I think I've got this. I can do something about this. Okay, I got this. Don't need to bring God into this. It's not that big a deal. And so we end up kind of prioritizing our problems based on what we can handle and what we need God for. And so when it gets above the what we can handle kind of threshold, then we go to God and say, God, you need to do something on my behalf. And God's saying right here, no, in the day of trouble, why don't you come to me first? Come to me first and say, God, I got this issue, and I'll come to you. And because the issue is, pride often elevates your own capacity to deal with problems. And it's only when the problems get bigger than your capacity to deal with them, your pride is kind of, stepped on, and then you have to go to God and say, well, God, I guess I need you. And God said, I don't want that. I want a relationship with you, God says, where you come to me for everything. You come to me for everything. I mean, really. So these are all relationship issues right here. All relationship. And when you do this, you'll glorify me. Now, this was also a secondary level ambush on my part. How in the world does glorifying happen because I'm full of thanks? I mean, what? Okay, so you got to break down the words. Many times you get religious words that tend to make your head spin so you don't think too clearly. Glorify, what is glorify? Glorify is making known something about who God is, making big. We sang it this morning about God's loving kindness is everlasting. Well, that's a big deal. You need to shout that from the rooftops, and we shouted that as much as we could this morning. That says something profound about who God is. He has a love for us that's unstoppable, cannot be quenched. His loving kindness is everlasting. You can't even stop it. It's a train of love aimed toward you. Okay, that's part of God's heart. So when you glorify God, you just make that known. You make it as big as you can. You magnify it, is what the psalmists say. So glorifying is making known the internal heart and nature of who God is in a broadcast, loud kind of way. I've said this before, but when I see the word glorify, I always think billboards. It's like getting a big old billboard and making it as big as possible for the most number of people who can see it and put on there, God's love will not stop. Okay, and that's glorifying. So let's go back. So if that's what glorifying is, then how is your thanksgiving glorifying God? How does your thanksgiving say something about maybe the unknown nature of God's heart? What does your thanksgiving say? Well, it's very simple. I mean, think about, have you ever had dinner with someone who you knew the people at the table were not believers? And so, you sit down at the table, everyone gets ready to eat, and then there's this awkward moment where they know and you know that you're not supposed to eat until someone prays. And they're trying to figure out, should they suggest that? Or should you suggest that? Or, how do we do this? What happened right here? And in that moment, if instead you were to just take a slight step of boldness and say something like this, and this is what we've said many times, say something like this. Say, well, it's our delight that as we come and eat, to thank God because He's the one that gives this to us. So would you just join us as we thank God as the source? And then we pray and say, God, we thank you that you see to our needs in a faithful, frequent kind of way. You understand our needs. You feel, and you go through all that kind of stuff. Well, in the doing of the thanksgiving, what are the people sitting around the table hearing? What's being glorified about who God is as you pray? What's being glorified is, my God is a God who sees to my needs. Why would God see to my needs? Well, because He loves me. Well, why does He love me? Because I'm special? No. He loves you because He loves you. Because He's loved. So in doing this simple task of thankfulness, being thankful, you're glorifying probably one of the key attributes of who God is. And when you do not thank, then everyone around you and yourself presumes that what you have, you brought it to this by yourself. You can take credit for what's there at that point, when indeed God's the one who does that. So thankfulness, he's saying, in the end, all these things, these glorify who God is. It glorifies who God is. Even in the bringing of sacrifices at the temple, it glorified who God was. God was saying that something has to die as a result of your sin. It was a great precursor to the coming of Jesus, to die for the debt of your own sin. But in doing so also, you came knowing that God was going to preserve your ability to be in His community through what you're doing right here, because God has paid the price some other way. Something else has died for me. And so my heart is thankful for the fact that my own sinfulness didn't get me kicked out of God's kingdom. because God provided a way out. So it does glorify God. We'll come back to this because he says this, he'll repeat this again at the end of the psalm. Okay, so that's the big deal right there. Let's push on. So he changes his audience now to the wicked. That was, by the way, that was for us. Oh no! Ambush number 3. Now we're going to talk about the wicked. Okay, good. Because then we can sort of let our own conviction kind of brew for a while, and we'll come back to it in just a second. Let's talk about the wicked. Yeah, let's talk about the wicked. Yeah, they're so bad. Okay, to the wicked, God says, what right have you to recite my statutes or take my covenant on your lips? Ooh, these are the wicked, actually in the nation of Israel, whose hearts are just really trashed. You know, what do you think you're doing, reciting my statutes, taking my covenant on your lips? You hate discipline. This is the discipline that molds you into ethically better things, and you cast my words behind you. God says, do this. Yeah, whatever. I mean, literally, that's a great picture. Whatever. You're supposed to take care of widows and orphans. Yeah, whatever. This is what these people are, the wicked. And if you see a thief, you're pleased with him. And you keep company with adulterers. In this year and the past year is the first time I've ever seen theft so condoned in public. It blows my mind. I mean, it blows my mind. and God is saying, this is the wicked right here. Right here. These are the wicked. This is what you are. In case you're wondering who I'm talking to, God says, this is you. And he says, you give your mouth free rein for evil and your tongue frames deceit. This is what the wicked do. They use their mouth in every opportunity to deceive and manipulate for their own good and for the bad of other people. It's horrible. This is the wicked. I'm talking to you. This is who I'm talking to you. You sit and you speak against your brother. You slander your own mother's son. I mean, your tongue is so messed up, you even slander your own family members. What in the world? Yeah, this is the wicked. This is who I'm talking to right here. Well, these things you have done, and I have been silent. Past tense, which implies not anymore. Not anymore. You thought that I was one like yourself. That's an interesting piece of, I don't know what you call that, cultural thing. But when you do stuff and you get away with stuff, you presume that God's okay with it. So you presume that, well, you know, I can fudge a little bit on telling the truth here and there, and God's not striking me dead, so God must be like that too, sort of, right? It's interesting. That's exactly, you thought that I was one like yourself because I've been silent, because I haven't stood up against it. But now I rebuke you and I lay the charge before you. Dirtbags. You guys are the wicked. Wow. Mark this then. Oh, well, okay, you got my attention. You who forget God, lest I tear you apart and there be none to deliver. Could it be that the chief sin of mankind is forgetting God? Mark this then, you who forget God. By the way, it's not just the wicked who forget God. When you're in a situation where you benefit from something of tremendous good, and you either credit yourself or somebody else and you don't credit God, you've just forgotten God. So this sort of cuts to the heart of why we are not as thankful as we really ought to be. It's because in the midst of the thing that you enjoy, you forget God. He's just out of the picture. We were just talking this last week about that. In a sense, when you forget God and you're not thankful for some great good which has come from His hand, when you forget God, you're being a functional, a practical atheist. In this situation with this particular thing, God doesn't exist. He doesn't exist. That's normally the root of thanklessness, is we forget God and we presume He has nothing to do with the things we benefit from. Is this the end? Can this be over now? Because this is Conviction 101. I forget God in the midst of the good things I have. Well, it's not quite the end. So, just a second. Verse 23. The one who offers thanksgiving as his sacrifice, glorifies me. To one who orders his way rightly, I'll show the salvation of God. Okay, that's a better close. That's his last verse, by the way. Heat from heaven. But look at this is what I want to dwell on. This is a fascinating phrase. He's summarizing again what he said just in the middle of the psalm. The one who offers thanksgiving as his sacrifice glorifies me, and the one who orders his way rightly, I'll show the salvation of God. The one who orders his way rightly, it's just people who value good over evil, is what we're talking about. But this one about thanksgiving, the one who offers thanksgiving as his sacrifice glorifies me. Do you realize that what he's saying right there in the context of the Old Testament, the temple Old Testament, the sacrifices Old Testament, he's saying that if you really want to glorify me, it's your thanksgiving itself as a sacrifice that glorifies me. That glorifies me. Again, this is like ambush number 4 for me. I've never considered my thanksgiving as something that actually amplifies who God is in the presence of people I'm with. But it does. I mean, it really does. So let's dwell on that just for a second. It's an important deal, especially when you look at Romans 1. And before I read that, what Paul's talking about in Romans 1 is he answers the question, what about the people who never hear about Jesus and never hear about salvation? What's going to happen to them? Are they going to be judged by the same standard? And what Paul says is that creation shows them. And in the creation, they don't have an excuse. For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him. So the primary thing that will get you sent to hell is the fact that you don't honor God or give thanks to him. Wow. So this Thanksgiving thing just came up several notches as I read Paul. Now, you can read more in Romans 1 about how that actually all works. But what he's saying is that all mankind through creation has been served notice about the fact that God exists. And they've been served notice about the fact that in creation, God is giving to mankind good things, but they will not acknowledge the source of these good things, and they will not thank God for these good things. And for that, they're going to hell. It's what he's saying right here. It could actually be. Now this is sort of another aha that I hadn't expected to see here. It could very well be that your degree of thankfulness in this situation telegraphs to you, not other people, but telegraphs to you what your relationship to God is like right now. It tells you where your relationship with God is. So if you're wondering where the relationship with God is kind of vital and moving and it's such a good deal, look at the frequency of your thankfulness for the things around you. We'll talk more about that. But this is just a convicting thing. So it's a big deal. The one who offers thanksgiving as a sacrifice, he glorifies me. Again, if we talk about glorifying, it's to make known, it's to declare, it's to proclaim, it's to magnify God's heart, who he really is. And so if you understand who God is in that way, and you thank him, it's going to glorify who he is. Okay? So that just helps us on understanding this. So what is God's heart like? What is it that I glorify about God? Well, this is God's heart in my short kind of summary. God loves us. Yes. God is good. None other is good. Jesus told us that. So God is good. Okay. And God gives good things to us. Yes. And God never stops giving to us. Okay, so that's God's heart. So when you're doing Thanksgiving, it turns out that is what you're saying to people. God loves me. He's good. He's the only one who's good. And this thing is good. God gives good things to me. Is this thing good? Yes, this thing is good. And God never stops giving. Yes, he never stops giving. So I think what we need to do before we eat this food is turn to the one who gave it to us, because this is good food. Heavenly Father, thank you for the great good that you bring to our lives. With such great faithfulness, you feed us with good things. Now, when Thanksgiving comes, I think a lot about turkey. And I think how much I love turkey dinners. And that smell in the house. I'm smelling it right now. Yeah, that smell in the house. And there's no way when you talk about the whole atmosphere of a turkey dinner that you can't say, this is good. I mean, this is good. Did you know this comes from the hand of God? No, it comes from Aunt Sue, who stood all day, cooking the turkey. And, she's part of the process. But if God is the only one who's good, then when you experience good things, this came from God. Inevitably through the pipeline, this came from God. I've always marveled about the fact about food. Food, especially if you read science fiction novels, astronaut food. It comes in something that looks like a toothpaste tube, and then they put flavors in it to make it sort of taste like something that you remember on Earth. And so you get this toothpaste tube that says turkey dinner, and you squeeze it in your mouth, you go, yeah, whatever, right? Okay. Not really good. What I'm getting at is that God could have made food for us like toothpaste astronaut dinners for our entire existence. He could have said, I'll make mankind, and as I make mankind needs nutrients. I'll invent food for him. I'll invent the most gray, boring, tasteless elements of nutrition I can possibly think of. Something that kind of looks like tofu. I'm sorry, a lot of people like tofu. But something that's so non-enjoyable in the worst sense, because after all, he needs nutrition, and we're just not going to bring the whole element of joy in the food thing. But he didn't do that. I mean, amen. God said, no. They do need this. But you know what? They're going to love this. They are just going to love this. We're going to make food one of the greatest delights of their life. I'm going to inspire people through the creativity that I've given them to make things, and you'll sit down and go, oh, yes. Now, God didn't have to do that. You know that, right? He could have said, take a teaspoon of this gray powder, and that's food. See, God in giving to you wants to glorify himself. He wants you to understand that he's giving to you things that he wants you to be delighted by, so that you'll put two and two together, that God delights in you. Amen. This is what he does. When you give gifts to your children, you give gifts that are tailored to them, that fit them, that that will delight them, so that you hope that eventually your kids will go, hey, my parents love me. They delight in me. They give me delightful presents. They don't just give me underwear for Christmas. They give me stuff that I want. Although I got a lot of underwear for Christmas, It's a delightful thing is what I'm saying. So God loves us, and God is good, and God gives good things to us, and he will not stop giving good things to us. And he's delighted by the fact that you're delighted by what he gives to you, and you're delighted by it. There's delight everywhere. And so the response on your part is, yeah, that was a pretty good dinner. Let's go out and watch a movie now. No. It's got to be, let's give thanks to God. Other things that delight me. I started going through this list of things that delight me that God could have done another way, but he deliberately did it in creation so that I would be delighted by it. I brought this one up before. Snow. Okay, we got snow haters in the room, and we got snow lovers in the room. Yeah, okay, there we go. No, let's not vote this time. Okay, but let's get down to the snowflake level. Have you looked at a snowflake? I mean, like under a microscope? Now, come on. God could have said, well, they'll need precipitation in the wintertime. It is kind of cold, but I'll just make it kind of this gray, sloppy, gloppy, icky stuff that's around. It's going to be on your feet, and you'll track it in the house. Well, sometimes the year's kind of like that. But no, wait. I got an idea. I'll make this tiny little crystal. Yeah. And even when they see it go on their arm, they'll go, whoa. And they'll be delighted by what that is. And then as they see it blanket this land that's lost its leaves and lost its cover, I'll give it a brilliant shine of white. They're going to really enjoy this. Well, until you try and drive on it. But see, God could have made all these things like astronaut toothpaste. He could have made these things just gross and gray and unenjoyable. But God loves you. God is good. God continues to give you good things, and God will not stop in his giving to you. And he's hoping that in the delight that you find in his gifts, you'll understand that he delights in you. Come on. We know this in human experience. So this ought to resonate some kind of thankfulness on our part, right? And yet, we don't. And that's the part we got to think about for a second. That's the part we got to wonder, why is it I don't actually delight in what God gives to me? And one of the 1,000 reasons isn't just like he said, you forget God's there, because that's part of it too. If you're a kid with a present, you forget God's there. You're so entranced with the present, you forget that God's there. And in fact, throughout the Old Testament, it talks about the fact that there's this syndrome in humanity. And the syndrome is this. God gives good gifts to humanity, to men and women, and you get so focused on the gift, you forget the giver. Now, that's a theme in the Old Testament. And I think that's a theme that follows with us as well. There's good things that come into our life, and yet we never really stop and say, you know what? If it's good, it came from God. Well, we'll talk more about this in a second. Clicker work. So mark this then, you who forget God. If you don't thank, then what you're doing in the moment is you're forgetting that God exists. That's the functional atheism that we were talking about. That's the practical atheism. So when you enjoy something greatly and you don't verbally give thanks to God, you and all the people around you presume it's something that's just coming to you because you deserve it. Whereas God's the one who's the source of the gift to start with. So in this functional atheism, you're not really giving glory to God. But if you stopped for a second and said, yeah, this is great. Now there's contexts all through life where I enjoy things as I was thinking through this, and probably you do too. If you think about the things that really just delight you. I mean, just really delight you. One gigantic area is people. There are people, many in this room, that just, I can't look at people because they'll think, he delights in it. I delight in them. I mean, it's just a delightful thing, the people that God puts in your realm of experience. And yet, 99.9% of the time is you're not the one who chose them to be there. So how is it that these people that you didn't select, you didn't ask them to audition to be Jim's friends, you didn't do that entire process, and yet they come into your sphere and they delight your heart? So do you in their presence, or even after you're with them, say, God, thank you for these wonderful people. I had no hand in choosing these people that you have, and you put us together, and you've delighted me, and I realize this comes from you. I don't do that very often, because you know what I do instead? The people who don't measure up to Jim's audition list, I complain about to God. God, why did you put them next to me? Oh, it's driving me crazy. I don't know what to do with them. I'm fast to do that. I'm fast to do it when the blessing isn't apparent, when it seems like there's a lack of blessing. I'm fast to go to God and complain. But when the blessing is there, I'm very slow to say, God, this came from you, right? They came from you, didn't they? They're actually handpicked by you to delight me, aren't they? And it's God's way of saying, now get this is cool. It's God's way of saying when delightful people are brought into your sphere of experience, it's God's way of saying, I knew they'd delight you because they delight me. Children. There's no way that you can pre-design your children. I know. Us parents are reflecting for a second like, oh boy. And there's good days and there's bad days. I mean, I won't admit that. There really are good days and bad days. But you know what? In the end, the sum total, at least of our children, is tremendous delight. I mean, just tremendous delight. And sure, they came from us, but what they became, we did not create. Where'd those people come from? They came from the hand of God. He said, I knew you would be delighted by them because they delight in me. Does it move you to thank God? Yeah. Should you thank God when they're being a little wayward? Yes. Yes. Because by God's hand, He has done this to delight you, and there are ups and down times. Same with friends and people He brings you. I mean, there's ups and down times, but you can rationally say that even during the lows of the lows in relationships, you can go to God and say, God, thank you for this person. That was a great conviction to me in looking through this. The people that are kind of, they're abrasive on my emotional calm. And I need to go to God and say, but God, they're a delight to you, aren't they? And I think in the end, they'll be a delight for me. I think they're a gift from you. Thank you for them. You can actually thank God in every circumstance, if this is true. And not only that, you can thank God for God being God, who delights in giving and in loving. So you can give thanks to the Lord because He's good. He's good. We could go on about this. In fact, we'll do a little more introspection. Let me ask you these. This are some closing questions. Have you ever experienced an unexpected blessing? I mean, something you didn't go looking for? Ever? All the time. All the time. I just mentioned one with people. I mean, all the time. Unexpected blessings. In our family, I was one of 3 sons. I was the only son that would eat different food. It was like that old Life cereal commercial where Mikey, give it to Mikey, he'll eat anything. That was me. I would eat anything. And in doing so, I would taste some foods and I'd go, hey, that's an unexpected blessing. Of course, I didn't say that when I was 7, but I would say, wow, this is really good. And I'd tell my brothers, hey guys, you should try this. No, I don't think so. Unexpected blessings. So when it came to food, that's how I discovered hot dogs. We won't get into hot dogs. But unexpected blessings, these are things that God brings into your sphere of experience that you're too stupid to know you'll like. And God says, you'll like this. And He delights in giving it to you. Unexpected blessings are places in which we shouldn't say, boy, am I fortunate, or boy, am I lucky, or boy, just by chance I got this and I'm just happy. No, it's God in His eternal wisdom and knowing your heart says, you're going to like this. Boom. One time, I've related this before because it so struck me. I was on a youth group trip. I was driving the white van and behind the steering wheel, and one of the other youth leaders is in the passenger seat next to me. And we're going to Mount Rainier in Washington. It was one of the few days where it was a cloudless day in that part of Washington. Cloudless. I mean, deep blue. A beautiful sky, and we're coming to Mount Rainier, which if you know Mount Rainier, it's got snow on it all year long, just all year long, and it's quite a sight. And we hadn't seen it yet. We came around, we're in this heavily wooded section of these mountains coming up near Mount Rainier, and we turned the corner and got our first view of Mount Rainier. We came around and kind of in slow motion, whoosh, there was Mount Rainier with snow. And I remember getting goosebumps, and the gal that was sitting next to me, the youth leader, she gasped. I heard her go, like that. And I said, Pam, do you realize that God made us to delight in that? And do you know that you can take almost all of mankind and put them in our seats and come around the corner, and we'll all have the same reaction to that? Isn't that crazy? Especially if you believe in chance evolution. Isn't that crazy that we all agree that that's just beautiful? And it causes us to catch our breath. Unexpected blessings. Unexpected blessings are things that God puts in your way because you're just not wise enough to realize I need to include this. And it'll delight me. In fact, 9 times out of 10, what you think is going to be an expected blessing, the things you think will bless you and bring good in your life, are actually almost always the opposite. We seem to be our own worst enemies when it comes to understanding things that will bring blessing in our life and good. The way you can prove that is most of us cannot pursue the things that we think will bring blessing and good because it costs too much money, so we don't have it. But for the people who have enough money, they can do that. And in huge relief, you see that people who have enough money to pursue what they think will bring blessing and good choose poorly in all of it. It's a truism. It just really is. And yet God, who loves you and is good, the only source of good, and who likes to give you good gifts and can't stop giving you good gifts, He looks at it and says, oh, they're going to love this. Unexpected blessing. Thanksgiving. And in that thanksgiving, we declare that God loves us, God's good, God delights in giving us good things, and He won't stop giving us good things. We glorify who He is. See, it's core to His nature. If you say God's nature is God is love, which is accurate, God is love, well, what transpires after love? Well, if God is good, which is, good for us as well, and God gives gifts, then when these things come to us, that's who God is. So I would submit, and we'll think about this for a while, I would submit that thankfulness is your appropriate response. Hey, you could even call it your appropriate worship. Hey, you could even call it your sacrifice. Thankfulness is the core way that you declare who God is and your relationship with Him. Ever experienced an exploit? Things that you don't seek out yourself, things you cannot create necessarily or can't afford, things that you would never pursue because we're just too dumb to realize that they'd be great for us. Do you depend upon good that you didn't create?
Yeah.
Oh man, ambush number 6. I don't know how many ambushes we have going right here. So I thought about this. I thought there's a ton of things that are good that I rely upon. And because I rely upon them and they're always there, I forget God. Again, a real theme in the Old Testament is, God, don't give me too little or too much. If you give me too little, I'll be tempted to go stealing. If you give me too much, I'll forget about you. So that shows up all over the Old Testament as well. And so he asks God, just give me enough to sort of get along, and then I won't be tempted in the other ones. Well, right here, what he's talking about is that there's an enormous amount of good things that you benefit from, often on a daily basis, that did not come from you. And yet you presume that everyone has them. In the biggest picture, you can talk about Western society. We are rich. We are rich. Rich. We are rich compared to the rest of the world. And yet we rely on those things that the richness brings to us. Don't give a second thought to God being part of that. When we go camping. When you go camping, right, Mike? When you go camping, you start to understand how the things that the richness of our society that we presume upon are really great luxuries, great delights. And for me, the contrast between camping and being at home is a hot shower. I mean, a hot shower. A hot shower when you're camping is like, man, this is big time stuff. A hot shower. Now, it could be anything for you. I mean, it could be lots of stuff. But the contrast is what makes this thing work. Because you realize, when I'm at home, every day I get up, I have a hot shower, go, I really like this. And you move on, you do your stuff, and it's so routine, and it's so delightful to you, but it's so routine and it's delight to you, you don't even give a thought anytime about the fact that this might be something from the hand of God. Really. Until you don't have it. And see, that's the issue we already know about humanity too. It's when you don't have the things you realize how much of a blessing they are. Well, while you have them, take a second, say, God, this is a great delight to me. I recognize this comes from your hand. Wow. Thank you so much for this. And I've mentioned this before. I do that when I take a shower in the mornings. Because it's my wake-up call that God has surrounded me with good things that delight me. And it starts with a shower. And then it goes on from that. I get up and I can actually eat. I can eat food. How many of us actually worry about having enough food to eat on a daily basis? This is part of the rich part of our society. We don't get something to eat and say, man, that was close. I almost starved. Thank God for giving me this food right now. We just eat it and we go on with the rest of the things we do. And yet God not only gives you food to eat that doesn't look like astronaut toothpaste, but He delights your heart with the food that you eat. Bacon wrapped - anything. Right? I mean, that's the way it is. So almost everything that you experience in your day-to-day life is something that you did not have a hand in generating. Well, that's not true. I paid for that bacon. Yeah, but did you raise the pig? Did you smoke the bacon? Well, no, but I paid someone else to do it. Did you take the petroleum out of the ground and turn it into gasoline so you get in your car and drive down there? Well, no other people did that, but I paid for that. And that car that you're driving in, did you dig the iron ore and smelt it and make the iron that makes the car and the aluminum that goes into it and the glass? Did you do all this? Well, no, but I paid for that. So you're living a life based on what everyone else has done. Pretty much. And guess what? On a larger level, that's true about God Himself. Because even your ability to pay for things comes from you working, and your ability to work comes from your health and your intelligence and your abilities that God gave to you. Even your ability to work is something that God gave to you. You can't even take credit for that. You can't. You just can't. You mean so like everything comes from God? So then in everything I can give thanks? Yeah. Do I? Yeah, I don't. I do when I take a shower. I do when I eat hot dogs. Or bacon. Or turkey. The obvious ones that delight you. But the routine things, they all come from God too. When the first snow comes down, it makes me pray. There's a thing that happens on Main Street here. I don't know if you've ever seen it. This is one of my greatest delights in the wintertime. Greatest delights in the wintertime here in Brigham City. We live on the north end of town, so we come up Main Street. And if I do it at the right time of the morning, a light powdery snow will come down and it'll rest on all these trees that line Main Street from about 900 to downtown, and it'll rest, and that snow that powdery snow just barely sits on those branches that kind of lean over the street. And if you time it just right, you're coming up the street and the sun's coming up in the morning and these low shafts of light scoot through the trees on Main Street, and then the magic happens. A tiny breath of wind happens. And all that powder dust that's sitting on top of those trees start dancing through the air. And they do that all the way up Main Street. I almost have to pull over because I'm praying so hard at that point. I mean, it's an unexpected blessing. It's a delight that I go to God and say, God, that was really, thanks. In that thanks, you're recognizing the fact that God delights in giving you good when you least expect it. I would contend that there's nothing good that you experience that comes from you. You are just not self-generating for hardly anything. And I already mentioned children. You'd say, well, I created those kids. It came from me. But you know, what they are, who they are, what they become, is not really you. Well, train up a child, and so I made them that way. Well, I have a very small influence. But who they become under God's hand become just a tremendous delight to you at every phase of their life. You're responsible for less than you think you are. So give thanks to the Lord because He's good. So outwardly declare God's love, and through that thanksgiving, outwardly declare who He is. And in doing that, you say, only God is good. That's what you say when you do thanksgiving. Only God is good. And this good thing came to me. I didn't seek it out. God's good. It defines your primary relationship of dependence on God's love. Is what it does. In every circumstance, in every situation, we need to be vigilant, because this, again, we tend to forget the presence of God. We forget His delight in giving to us good things. So you can reverse that by saying, no, today I'm going to be diligent. I'm going to look for the ways in which God has blessed me, and I'm going to take those back to God and say, God, you did this, and that's why I love you, because you delight in me so much. It's an interesting thing as well, that when you're in the absence of good things, when it looks like you have no good things on your side of the list, you got your good list and your bad list, and your good list is very short and your bad list is huge. And then you complain to God about the absence of things. Complaining to God about the absence of things is not thankfulness. It's more like being a spoiled child. Well, they have this and I don't, so I want this too. It's just not fair. It's just not fair. Don't go the it's not fair route, because if you go the it's not fair route, in your sinfulness, you're toast. So you don't want to go down the it's not fair route. But what we do is we go down this kind of comparison with other people. They have this and I don't. Why do we have different outcomes in that sense? I don't think that's fair. I think we need a fair outcome in terms of what everyone has. They have a better and newer car than I do. I think I want a better, newer car too, God. But it gets worse than that, because on the negative side of the list, it can be things like health. God, this is not fair. I'm losing my health in this area, and look at all the people that have their health. That's not fair. And so I complain to God and tell Him He needs to come up. He needs to come up with a good health kind of thing, because after all, that's the only way that's fair. Well, we understand that thinking. But it turns out that even when your negative list looks huge, you still need to give thanks, because believe it or not, you're still the beneficiary of a huge boatload of good in other places that you're not deficient. And that's sufficient to thank God. Well, we could go on about this all day long. I'm just going to leave it for the Holy Spirit to kind of do what He does when we talk about this. But I'm going to give you just one assignment. And that assignment is, sometime later this week, as you come closer to Thanksgiving, go back and read Psalm 50. It's not a psalm you read at Thanksgiving. But read Psalm 50 again. Notice how God comes on so strong at the beginning. I am God, I'm your God. All of earth, listen up. You're not being thankful. Why should God expect that? Because everything came from Him. He owns the place. It's all His. Reminds me of the parable that Jesus told about the owner of the vineyard who finds sharecroppers basically to run the vineyard as he goes off someplace else. And then he comes back and sends guys saying, you need to pay your 10%. That's owed to the owner of the vineyard while you guys worked it, but you just didn't need to pay me. Of course, every time they do that, they repudiate the request and they start killing messengers. And then finally, the owner of the vineyard says, I'll send my son. Sure, they'll respect my son. And they don't. They kill him because they say, if we kill him, we'll take the inheritance. The whole place will be ours. In that whole picture that he shows of that vineyard, he's trying to say that this vineyard of the earth belongs to God. He's the owner of the place. He is the owner of the place. We are sharecroppers. We live here at his wishes. We live here. But as we live here, we need to constantly be going back and saying, but you know what? Great vineyard, but it still doesn't belong to me. It belongs to God. So as we have a great harvest this year, the good things that come into your life, this is God's place, and I'm the beneficiary of God's place. I need to thank Him for who He is. But again, when we forget God, we forget the fact that this is His place. And we're just squatters in a place that He owns. We need to give thanks to Him. And that's why as you read Psalm 50, he comes on so strong. I am God. I am the mighty God. I am the El Elohim. I am the Yahweh. I'm the one He made covenant with. I'm the one that made this place. You are my people. I am your God. If that's the case, why aren't you giving thanks? Because I forget? Yes, you forget. You forget. So start remembering. That's what I'm saying. Read Psalm 50 again. See how God comes out so strong. And He says, your sacrifices, they're okay. Bulls and goats, bulls and goats. You don't do that because I need to have dinner. But you do it to remind yourself, to remind people around you that God's loving kindness goes beyond your own sinfulness. He forgives quickly. He's slow to anger. Thankfulness. Thankful. You want to talk about a sacrifice? You want to talk about a worship that's appropriate? Thankfulness. That'll do it right there. I think I'm done talking. Too much conviction for one morning. The supreme unexpected blessing. Sunrises, sunsets. Sunrises and sunsets. It is such a blessing that people line up at night waiting for it to happen. And then when it happens, you go, oh, yeah. And you know what? It happens every day. Because God says, you're going to love this. You're going to love this so much, it'll happen every day. And guess what? If you're really dutiful, you can do it in the morning and you can do it in the evening. Who's up for that? I'm up for that. Yeah. God delights in giving you good things because He delights in you. And He's hoping that you understand that His love for you is reflected in that delightful gift. And that's why in Romans 1, he can say that people are without excuse. You live in a place like this, you understand that you're the beneficiary of good that you did not create and you did not seek. Even in the most pagan cultures that have never heard of Jesus, in the pagan culture, they'll make up their own myths about the fact that there is some God because they even understand that they're benefiting from things that are outside of their control. This must be coming from somewhere. This can't be chance. And they make up myths about that. That's how profound and eloquent creation is about the God who made everything and delights us and continues to inhabit this place with delightful things. And yet we're slow. We forget. Okay, let's do that. What do you say? Father in heaven, we thank You for your persistent love toward us. Gosh, I really feel convicted from this psalm about how little, how small a portion of my life's attention and words are in giving thanks to You. I take so many things for granted, so many things. And yet, Lord, there are those times where You put something in front of me that is so unavoidably good and full of blessing and full of delight. that my soul can hardly do anything else but pull over in praise. So thanks for waking me up during those periods where I forget. You are so good, and you are so good to us. And your love toward us never ends. It never comes to an end. There's nothing we can do to stop it. What a great delight that is to our hearts. So, our Lord, I just pray this week through your Spirit that lives within us, that you'd grab our attention to the big things and the little things that are hand-wrapped delights from you to delight our hearts and to communicate your love to us, because you do love us. Show us the things we walk by so quickly and so routinely that you've laid in place for us. And Father, beyond that, I pray that you would give us an understanding, even in the absence of what looks like any good in our life, that you would begin the process of maturing our hearts to realize that the greatest thing we have to thank for you is the fact that you're a good God, and that our names are written in heaven by your initiative and by taking our place or our debts from our sins. And that's sufficient enough for me 24/7 to thank you for where I am. Lord, we want to be people who are thankful in the midst of a fallen generation that finds nothing to honor God or thank God for. And God, I pray that through our thankfulness, that you might glorify who you are to a world that's desperate and desiring to find good and to find blessing, and are so easily maneuvered and deceived into believing things that are good or actually are false and evil. Father, we want to glorify you, and we understand that Thanksgiving is one of the best ways to do it. So we thank you for the blessing you are in our lives. Amen.